Chapter 1969. Righteous Yi Futian. Chapter 1969. Righteous Yi Futian. The Renhuang of the North arrived in Wangdu in force, and challenged the Renhuangs of Wangdu at the law battle platform inside the Heavenly Battle Palace. Multiple Renhuang-level law battles took place. The Wangdu camp lost more than they won. One could even say that they were overwhelmingly defeated. Many Renhuangs had also suffered severe injuries. After news of this got out, all of Wangdu was shocked. Factions from all sides were ready to make their move. It was as if a brewing storm was about to arrive. The Renhuangs who gathered at the Heavenly Battle Palace this time were not only Renhuangs from their faction. Renhuangs from all sides were also invited. Apart from some of the top factions in Wangdu, many top factions around Dongxiao continent were also there. Their lineup was most definitely very powerful. However, despite that, they were still crushed. One could only imagine just how strong the lineup of the visitors from the north was. They were definitely the elites among the elites. These powerful Renhuangs from the north were specifically handpicked before they traveled and arrived at Wangdu. That was why their battle strength was so high. It was certain the great Yin ancient royal family was behind them. There were rumors that they had already arrived and were staying in a pavilion within Wangdu. This caused a considerable commotion very quickly inside Wangdu. Many people were already talking about it. Apart from the law battle itself, one person received a lot of attention and a lot of criticism. That person was obviously Yi Lionian, the person who gained his fame just one day ago. Yi Lionian earned his fame after he defeated Grandmaster Zi He in the Alchemy Conference. Many people knew him after that. According to rumors, someone challenged him a day earlier, and with just a glare, he injured the person. He was mighty. However, when a strong cultivator from the north issued a challenge during the law battle, Yi Lionian denied any connections to Wangdu, even the entire Dongxiao continent, before leaving, avoiding battle altogether. His actions and style annoyed many people. Even if he were an amazing alchemy grandmaster, his actions were shameless, particularly when the fight involved the conflict of two sides. Everyone was caught up in the overall trend, but he actually drew a line to clearly separate him from Wangdu. How could people not criticize him for that? Who was this genius alchemy grandmaster that the alchemy emperor brought over? It seemed like his conduct was questionable. Moreover, one should not forget that the alchemy emperor and the Wangshan watchtower were connected. According to rumors, the alchemy emperor was once handpicked by the good friend of the millet emperor, supreme deity Donglai, and who was not aware of the relationship between supreme deity Donglai and the great Yin ancient royal family. Yi Futian choosing to run away at this time would naturally invite gossip. However, Yi Futian did not mind. After he returned to the inn, he shut himself in his room and cultivated in peace. An absolute beauty suddenly appeared beside the cultivating Yi Futian. Senior sister, Yi Futian called out after seeing that Goddess Donglai was the one who came. Why didn't you lend a hand? Asked Goddess Donglai calmly. No one could tell her emotion from her tone. I did not want to, so I didn't, answered Yi Futian laughing. Didn't want to? Goddess Donglai looked at him. Yi Futian raised his head and looked at the cold and prideful figure before saying, I inherited the path of supreme deity Donglai. Does senior sister think that a Renhuang of the same plane from the north is a worthy opponent? Goddess Donglai's eyes twitched slightly as she continued staring at him. Since the people from the great Yin ancient royal family have not acted, would I not be devaluing myself by entering the law battle platform? How could I live up to the name of the heir of the supreme deity if that were the case? Answered Yi Futian with a smile. Then he continued. I'm sure senior sister knows as well. If I were to act before the cultivators from the great Yin ancient royal family appeared, the eastern deity island would also lose face. Goddess Donglai looked at him. What Yi Futian said sounded very sensible. As the heir of supreme deity Donglai, his opponent should be someone from the great Yin ancient royal family. Since the great Yin ancient royal family had not even made an appearance, what was the reason for him to act? As she thought of that, Goddess Donglai no longer brought it up. Instead, she said, there are many rumors about you circulating outside. Many practitioners know that you live here. Many are gossiping, and I'm afraid some may try to create commotions to ruin my name. I've just come. Why would someone do this? Asked Yi Futian. To prevent you from entering the Wangshan watchtower, answered Goddess Donglai. Yi Futian was stunned briefly. In that instant he suddenly understood. With his talent and strength in alchemy, if he were to get in touch with the Millet Emperor after entering the Wangshan watchtower, he could threaten the position of the Alchemy Divine Palace directly in the future. If his name were ruined, and if news of him drawing a line to segregate him from Wangdu were to reach the ears of the practitioners of the Wangshan watchtower, it would be natural for them to form an opinion about him and impact his chances of getting into the Wangshan watchtower. Unfortunately, the enemy's efforts were in vain. First of all, Yi Futian had no intention of entering the Wangshan watchtower to cultivate. Secondly, with the relationship between the Millet Emperor and Supreme Deity Donglai, the enemy would probably not prevent anything from happening. Moreover, Yi Futian's strength was there. This is sharing my blessings. So the misfortune in the future, I'll leave it to you. As he finished speaking, he patted Lin Qiu's shoulder. Lin Qiu was so grateful that tears almost rolled out of his eyes. I will give my everything. Lin Qiu's eyes were red. He stretched out his hands to receive the clay bottle. He held the bottle with a lot of strength, but did not take it. He looked at the reluctant Yi Futian and continued, I will not hesitate to lay down my life to go through the depths of hell for you. Yi Futian finally let go. His gaze continued to linger on the clay bottle. Lin Qiu quickly packed it up. How could he afford Yi Futian the chance to feel regret? Brother Yi, I will not interrupt your cultivation anymore. I still have some matters that I need to attend to. If Brother Yi has any orders, please look for me at any time. As he finished speaking, Lin Qiu turned around to leave. He could not have moved any quicker. Yi Futian blinked a few times as he saw Lin Qiu leave. Shameless. He had never seen such a shameless Renhuang. Sigh. What a pity for his treasured pills. He extended his hand. A clay bottle identical to the one earlier appeared in his hands. He opened the clay bottle and took out the pills within it. Then, he threw them into his mouth before devouring them in one go. In an instant, strands of powerful aura began to fluctuate around his body. Such valuable pills. Was it easy for him to make them? He only had a few hundred bottles left on him. The following day, Lin Qiu had come to Yi Futian's side again. However, it was not only Lin Qiu. He also brought along two brothers, Han Tai and Leng Yi. They were all descendants of the three lords of the Dragon Submission Villa. The Lin Qiu of that moment had completely changed. His plane level seemed to have improved. His face was bright, and he looked very energetic. The three of them bowed together at the same time when they found Yi Futian. In particular, Lin Qiu looked at Yi Futian with gratitude and said, Thank you, Brother Yi, for giving us such valuable pills. The pills were high-class divine pills that could solidify one's path fundamentals. After taking them, the fundamentals of one's great path would stabilize further, while one's life force would become vigorous and energy levels would also go up. Cultivating for a day would result in a marked improvement of one's plane level. Where would anyone find such amazing divine pills? Yi Futian's generosity was commendable. How could someone not be so grateful when shown such generosity? Yi Futian glanced at them and waved his hands. Then he said, Since we are all brothers now, don't be so formal. Those pills were given to me by the deity, so that I could break through my plane level. Since you needed them, I gave them to you. I can cultivate a few more decades for that. It is only a few decades, it's nothing big. This. The three of them were endlessly thankful. Chapter 1970, Opinions. Chapter 1970. Opinions. Naturally, Lin Qiu and the other two knew that Yi Futian's decades were exaggerated. After all, they knew that he was not the most honest of people. However, they could not deny the value and worth of those pills. The item class of those pills was such that they were difficult to obtain, even in the Dragon Submission Mountain range. Moreover, they were far from something that a person with Yi Futian's cultivation and plane level could create. As such, they were definitely gifts from the daughter of the Supreme Deity. With Yi Futian giving the pills to them, they were naturally grateful. It was a significant favor. If Brother Yi has any requests in the future, please just let us know, said Leng Yi, who was beside Lin Qiu. The three of them were the sons of the three villa lords of the Dragon Submission Villa. They were also temperamental people who were extremely loyal. Otherwise, the three villa lords would not have been able to stay together for so many years. Yi Futian smiled and said, "With your cultivation and plane levels, the pills can last for some time. They are not so easily refined. You should continue cultivating them and maximize the effects of the pills. I have nothing at the moment." "All right." Lin Qiu nodded. "Since that is the case, Brother Yi, we will take our leave for now." After that, the three of them turned around to return to their cultivation. The main reason they came this time was that they were utterly stunned by the pill's effect and had to come personally to thank Yi Futian specifically. At that moment, it was true that they had not yet fully refined those pills and could continue cultivating and improving themselves. Yi Futian continued to cultivate in silence. Wang Du remained as busy as ever. The cultivators from the north did not continue causing problems. However, they also did not leave. They had settled down inside Wang Du. Many people understood that the cultivators of the north came specifically for the Wangshan watchtower. Naturally, the great Yan ancient royal family was behind them, and the royal family had also arrived some time ago. It was just that they had not made an appearance. On this day, the alchemy emperor and goddess Donglai visited Yi Futian together. "Senior brother, is there news?" Yi Futian smiled gently and asked the alchemy emperor. The alchemy emperor liked Yi Futian's address of him. While his position was respected, being the top alchemy grandmaster of the Taiyuan continent, he always revered supreme deity Donglai. Back in the day, he was not considered supreme deity Donglai's real disciple, and it had always been a great regret of his. Yi Futian inherited supreme deity Donglai's will, so it was naturally proper for him to become the heir. For him to be willing to call him senior brother, the alchemy emperor was naturally quite happy. "Yes," the alchemy emperor nodded. "News has come from the Wangshan watchtower. The Wangshan watchtower will open in 3 days. At that time, everyone who came will have a chance to go. We are the same. By then, you will have to grasp the opportunity to try to meet the Millet Emperor." "Understood." Yi Futian nodded. They had already been there for several days. Naturally, he already knew about things surrounding the Wangshan watchtower. The Wangshan watchtower stood at the peak of the city of Wangdu. Every year, practitioners from Wangdu and all other continents who came would have a chance to enter the Wangshan watchtower to cultivate and even meet the Millet Emperor and listen to his words. It was a tradition that had remained unchanged for many years. Every year, at this time, the Millet Emperor would sit within the Wangshan watchtower and preach. It was a chance for Renhuangs to reach the Millet Emperor. Initially, they had thought that Yi Futian's status as the heir to supreme deity Donglai would be enough for him to meet the Millet Emperor. However, goddess Donglai did not make that happen. Instead, she wanted to let Yi Futian prove himself first before anything could happen. Apart from that, everyone who came had come for this. Even the great Yan ancient royal family had led a group of powerful cultivators from the north for this. They had remained very quiet over the past few days, so it was highly likely that they were also waiting for this day. There was no way the Wangshan watchtower was going to be peaceful. Of course, the Wangshan watchtower had long got wind that the great Yan ancient royal family had arrived. However, they did not need to worry about such things. "Get ready. We'll come and notify you again before we depart," said the alchemy emperor. Yi Futian nodded. He did not need to prepare anything, to be honest. His main competitions for this journey to the Wangshan watchtower were the practitioners of the Dongxiao continent. They were not really strong enough to put any pressure on him. The only ones who could threaten him were most likely the top factions, such as the almighty great Yan ancient royal family. As such, since the beginning, he had been taking it easy when facing the Alchemy Divine Palace and the Qinhe Palace. The reason was that he did not care much and did not see them as his opponents. As the news of Wangshan watchtower spread, Wangdu became a lot busier in an instant. Multiple people began talking. How many Renhuang would have the chance to enter the Wangshan watchtower to cultivate and study the Great Path? How many would have the opportunity to meet the Millet Emperor, to receive the teachings of the Millet Emperor? However, before all this, the Wangshan watchtower also had a commotion. the commotion concerning the great Yin ancient royal family. They were not friendly, and had kept quiet over the past few days. It was highly likely that they were waiting for this day. 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. For practitioners it was too short. When the day came, the entire city of Wangdu was effervescence. At dawn, countless people were already moving in the skies. Every cultivator was headed in the same direction. From afar, one could vaguely see a towering ancient palace far away in the direction they were heading. It looked like the reflection of a divine ancient imperial city in the clouds in the mortal realm. In the skies of Wangdu, auras filled the sky. Some glided across the sky, others moved on their swords, and some rode on beasts. On this day, in a pavilion inside Wangdu, a figure exited a room. The figure raised his head and looked toward a place far away. Then in a flash, multiple shadows had entered and landed in several locations nearby. However, no one could be seen anywhere. "Make preparations," said the figure in the room calmly. "Understood." Neat and uniform voices came from his surroundings. Then, multiple shadows disappeared one after another. On this day, the entire city of Wangdu seemed to be moving. The city was bustling like never before. According to legends, in the beginning, the Wangshan watchtower was only a few walls. The Millet Emperor and Supreme Deity Donglai discussed the Great Path amidst these walls. However, as the years passed, the Wangshan watchtower had become a holy land, the strongest force across the Dongxiao continent. It sat at the center of Wangdu and occupied a large space. Looking in from the outside, it was impossible to see the border. One could only see an endless and empty space. If one tried hard enough, one could maybe vaguely see the walls of the Great Path that pierced into the sky, as well as several magnificent towering ancient buildings. And standing at the peak of everything, the ancient palace that floated in the sky, that was the place where the Millet Emperor cultivated, according to legend. It was said that behind the floating empty palace was the old Wangshan watchtower, which had remained perfectly preserved even now. At that moment, multiple practitioners had arrived outside the Wangshan watchtower. One could not see the end of the crowd in one look. However, most were here as observers. Normal people were not qualified to enter the Wangshan watchtower. Otherwise, the Wangshan watchtower would have a problem with overcrowdedness. Only the top factions from the different continents, and the top factions of Wangdu, were qualified to recommend some renhuangs to enter the Wangshan watchtower to train. The recommendations by the factions were always the strongest, and those with the highest potentials. As such, a competition like this would occur every year. At that time a group arrived. Their robes fluttered in the wind, as if they were deities. Countless gazes fell upon the group. Then someone uttered, "The deities from the Goddess Peak have arrived." The Goddess Peak was a top faction of Wangdu. Naturally, they could make recommendations to enter the Wangshan watchtower and meet the Millet Emperor to receive his teachings. Entering the Wangshan watchtower did not mean joining the Wangshan watchtower. It simply meant entering to cultivate, train, and receive teachings. If one were strong enough to interest the Wangshan watchtower, one could also be selected to join the Wangshan watchtower. "Good morning, dear deities." Another group of strong cultivators had arrived. They were the cultivators from the Alchemy Divine Palace. Many practitioners followed them, as if a myriad of stars surrounding and supporting the moon. Cultivators from all sides also went up to greet them. They all seemed very formal and polite. After that came the Heavenly Battle Palace, the Qinhe Palace, and many other factions. There were also the factions from the continents surrounding the Dongxiao continent. At that time, another group of cultivators came from the sky and landed outside the Wangshan watchtower. The one in the lead was the Alchemy Emperor. It was Futian's group. In an instant, many people shifted their gaze toward them. Many cultivators from the Alchemy Divine Palace gently bowed and greeted the Alchemy Emperor. Meeting the Alchemy Emperor, their voices instantly attracted even more gazes. The Alchemy Emperor had arrived. That meant that the white-haired youth beside him was probably Yi Lionian. Meeting the Alchemy Emperor, many people bowed to the Alchemy Emperor. However, no one knew if they were sincere or not. Some looked toward Yi Futian. Then someone said, "Senior Alchemy Emperor." This person said that he is not a practitioner of Wangdu and has no connection to the Dongxiao continent. refusing to take part in a battle. For someone who acts like that, why should you bring him here? The one who spoke was a cultivator from the Qinhe Palace. After that, he glanced at Yi Futian and said, "Since you've already severed your relationship with the Dongxiao continent, why are you still here?" The crowd was now focused on Yi Futian. The incident at the Heavenly Battle Palace last time clearly irked many people. Now, upon seeing that he was trying to enter the Wangshan Watchtower, many were clearly annoyed. Qi Mu from the Alchemy Divine Palace smiled gently as he watched. In the end, he was still affected. He was certain that the people of Wangshan Watchtower would have a bad impression of him due to the incident. The difficulty of Yi Futian entering the Wangshan Watchtower had clearly increased significantly. He could even face early elimination. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Yi Futian glanced at the people, but before he could speak, Lin Xiu walked up and swept a glance at them. "When did it become the turn of all of you to take charge of the affairs of Wangshan Watchtower?" "Today. When Ren Huangyi came to Wangshan Watchtower, did he have to ask all of you first if he could enter? Are you guys already able to represent the attitude of Wangshan Watchtower?" Yi Futian glanced at the people, but before he could speak, Lin Xiu walked up and swept a glance at them. "When did it become the turn of all of you to take charge of the affairs of Wangshan Watchtower?" "Today. When Ren Huangyi came to Wangshan Watchtower, did he have to ask all of you first if he could enter? Are you guys already able to represent the attitude of Wangshan Watchtower?" Lin Xiu's words caused the pupils of all the people to contract slightly. He criticized them very harshly. There is also the matter of the Heavenly Battle Palace. You deceived Ren Huangyi. After he arrived, you spoke provocatively and were disrespectful to him. But now, when necessary, you encourage Ren Huangyi to participate in the war. Who do you think you are? Are you better than Ren Huangyi in alchemy? Or are you stronger than him? Lin Xiu continued. That day, you were thoroughly defeated. Knowing that your own strength is not good, are you now looking for someone to take the blame? His voice was lighthearted, not happy or angry. He seemed exceptionally calm. The other party just wanted to refute, but heard Lin Xiu continue. Cut the crap. Do you know why Ren Huangyi left? In the eyes of Ren Huangyi, you are just a group of nobodies. Ren Huangyi is not interested in alchemy, yet you wanted him to take action. And what was the result? It was the same in the Heavenly Battle Palace that day. The Ren Huangs of the Qinhe Palace provoked him. What happened in the end? So, I see that you're still not repentant now. It seems that you haven't learned your lesson yet. The people looked at Lin Xiu. This series of words blocked their words back. This guy did not seem to be a nosy person, but he had such a glib tongue. Yi Futian did not care to be with them. After listening to Lin Xiu's words, the people around them vaguely felt that they might have misunderstood Yi Futian. The truth was that the other party kept provoking, and he was too lazy to have contact with the other party before leaving. Lin Xiu, no matter how clever you are, you can't change the fact that he ended his relationship with us and avoided fighting. A strong person from the Qinhe Palace coldly said. Did he want to get rid of that matter by talking his way out of it? Avoiding and not fighting? Yi Futian raised his head and swept his gaze at the person who spoke. Those indifferent eyes were filled with contempt as he opened his mouth. Are you also worthy of fighting? Saying that, he moved his gaze away without looking at the other party again, and walked towards the front. Lin Xiu, since you also know it's a bunch of nothing, why bother with more words and waste your energy? Lin Xiu knew how strong Yi Futian was, so he helped him brag a bit. Anyway, he would be exposed soon. Then he would see how the other party would react. He did not expect Yi Futian himself to say such arrogant words. This time it would be interesting. These Ren Huangs were probably even more upset now. He was increasingly looking forward to it. Yi Futian told him previously that the arrogant Ren Huang at the northern land was an unworthy opponent. The eyes of everyone from all sides were all staring at Yi Futian. This guy was simply arrogant to the extreme. There were many Ren Huangs here. The major top powers of Wangdu and the top figures of all continents were present. He even said wildly that they, who stood at the top of the Dongxiao continent, are a bunch of rabble-rousers? Since that's the case, I'm looking forward to your next performance. The strong man from Qinhe Palace responded indifferently, and all the cultivators from all sides also looked at Yi Futian. Once he entered Wangshan Watchtower, they would be able to know the truth. Having been so arrogant, if he did not have real strength, he would be miserable. This time, Yi Futian offended a lot of people. In one direction, the goddess emperor Yi also took a look at Yi Futian, thinking that Yi Futian was really different. Cultivating in Wangdu, she had also seen all kinds of people and many top cultivators. No one was like Yi Futian. Facing top cultivators from all sides, it was as if he was independent of the world. That feeling was like no one could really get his attention. Whether it was the Heavenly Battle Palace's Yang Qian, the Alchemy Divine Palace's successor Qi Mu, or those powerful Renhuangs from the northern land, he had never regarded them properly. He was extremely arrogant. She was also very much looking forward to what kind of strength this level 4 human emperor actually had to allow him to disregard everyone from Wangdu. Just at that time, at the faraway Wangshan Watchtower, several extremely majestic figures appeared in the firmament. They gazed directly through the void, looking at these people coming. Although they were far apart, it was as if they were close at hand. "Start the formation," said someone above Wangshan Watchtower. In an instant, the world changed, from the outside of the Wangshan Watchtower to the inside. That empty place filled with wisps of the aura of the Great Way, and became indistinct. In front, one could see the stairs to the Wangshan Watchtower and palaces. They seemed to be close at hand, but the people of Wangdu knew that they only seemed to be close at hand. If they wanted to step onto the stairs and enter the Wangshan Watchtower, it would be difficult to do. At this moment, a great formation appeared in the Wangshan Watchtower, and only those who had broken through this great clan-guarding matrix will be qualified to go up to the Wangshan Watchtower and have the opportunity to listen to the preaching of the Millet Emperor. That had been the rule for many years. Those who seek the Tao can now enter. A voice came from the void in the distance. At once, countless people looked ahead and did not think about things about Yi Futian anymore. The Wangshan Watchtower was open. It was an extremely rare opportunity. He wondered who would be able to grasp it. The various forces stepped forward and stepped into that spell matrix. Yi Futian perceived the spell matrix, which formed a space of its own. It was marvelous, and a master-level person definitely set up this spell matrix. "Go in," the Alchemy Emperor said to Yi Futian, and he nodded. A group of people stepped forward and walked towards the front. The Alchemy Emperor, Goddess Donglai, and several of them watched from the outside. Not only they were like that, but the various factions were also like that too. If they could break through that spell matrix, they would have broken through it many years ago. Many top figures of the older generation had listened to the teachings of the Millet Emperor. This time, the people who came were the younger generations of their respective factions, and those most confident of breaking through. Because of the limited number of places, they would only choose the most promising and powerful Renhuangs to enter each year. When Yi Futian stepped out of it, he felt that everything was changing. The matrix of the Great Way seemed to have forged an illusionary realm. This was no longer the world he saw before, but a completely imaginary world. This area was vast and endless, with many buildings and mountain peaks. Gazing into the distance, at the farthest place within his gaze, only vaguely could he see a heaven's gate, like a door leading to the Wangshan Watchtower. His eyes changed abruptly with a touch of demonic color, as he tried to see through the illusion. He was able to see that the buildings here, and this heaven and earth were made of the power of the Great Way. But he could not look through completely. He could see, but he could not exit, and was still stuck in the spell matrix. An invisible wall might appeared in heaven and earth. It seemed that countless Tao air currents were flowing to and falling on their bodies, making them all bear an invisible oppressive force. "Be careful. Someone will attack. It's the cultivators of the Wangshan Watchtower," Lin Qiu instructed Yi Futian. "In addition to that, we have to be careful of the cultivators of other powers." Yi Futian nodded. He probably already knew something before coming. To enter the Wangshan Watchtower, he needed to walk through this clan-guarding matrix. And in this matrix, there would be cultivators of the Wangshan watchtower attacking them. They were in the light, and the other side was in the dark. A group of people spread out in formation, not standing together. On Yi Futian's side, there were Xiaqing Yuan Beigong Shuang, Bai Mu and Zifeng. Judging from strength, naturally, Zifeng was the strongest. Buzz! At this moment, someone was extremely fast, and turned into a bolt of lightning, as he tried to break through quickly. However, a giant hand slammed down from the firmament suddenly, seemingly descending from out of nowhere. The giant golden hand covered a portion of the sky and hid the sun. There were many runes on the giant impenetrable hand that slammed down. The cultivator's retreat was blocked. Bearing the extremely strong will might, his divine wheel of the great path erupted. His body shot directly through the void, and crashed toward the sky above head-on. Clang! A loud sound came out, as that person who rushed into the forefront of the cultivators was directly blasted into the ground by the palm of the Great Way. His body was dented, and he looked very miserable. The next moment, a golden hand appeared in the void, directly grabbing him and taking him away. Seeing this scene, the various powerful cultivators became cautious. Needless to say, the Wangshan Watchtower cultivators were powerful. Those who could enter the Wangshan Watchtower were probably more talented than a majority of them. Breaking through the formation was no simple matter. As they were trying to break through the matrix, outside the Wangshan Watchtower, another vast group of figures appeared. The auras of these people were scary, and many recognized them. They were the Renhuangs of the northern land that descended upon the heavenly battle palace that day. However, they had never seen the few people at the head of the group in the heavenly battle palace before. However, with just one glance, the people knew where these people came from. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1972. Interspatial Encounter. Chapter 1972. Interspatial Encounter. After the Wangshan Watchtower became the top sacred place in the Dongshao continent, the Millet Emperor started preaching here. For many years, countless mighty figures have entered the Wangshan Watchtower to cultivate. At this time, on top of one of the buildings in the Wangshan Watchtower, there stood many Renhuangs, each appearing in a different position, very scattered. Their eyes were looking at the spell matrix in front of them at this moment, which hid the heaven and earth within the spatial world in the Wangshan Watchtower. They could clearly see everything within the spatial world in the spell matrix, and many Renhuangs were releasing powerful auras of the Great Way, launching attacks toward the spatial world from time to time. This time, I don't know if there are any powerful people who come to the Wangshan Watchtower to seek the way. A Renhuang smiled and said. As he spoke, he raised his hand and attacked. A huge pagoda came down directly into the formation, and attacked a Renhuang of the same realm as him. This spell matrix was a test of combat power for those who sought the way. They would select people of the same realm to attack. Of course, this was not the law. If they encountered powerful people, people of higher realms would also strike as they wish. But the strongest people of the Wangshan Watchtower would see in their eyes who was strong and who was weak. They could be screened in the law battle. They could even enter the spell matrix to attack. But of course, generally speaking, they would not do so unless they met someone who interested them very much. In the front position, at the lower space of the Wangshan Watchtower, an old man with an immortal style was sitting quietly there, with several strong people standing beside him in the left and right direction. He swept his gaze ahead and said, "They're here." The old man looked into the distance. Beyond the spell formation, outside of the Wangshan Watchtower, a group of powerful people appeared there. They knew who those people were. They were the powerful people from the northern land, led by the ancient royal family of the Yin Kingdom. "Don't bother," the old man responded. Yes, the people next to him nodded. They wanted to see what the ancient royal family of the Yin Kingdom wanted to do by leading the strong people from the northern land. Now they just needed to wait and see what happens. No matter what can the ancient royal family of the Yin Kingdom do? If the master of the ancient royal family of the Yin Kingdom did not come, who could affect the Wangshan Watchtower with the Millet Emperor around? Therefore, even though they knew that the other party had arrived, The Wangshan watchtower did not take any action, but just let nature take its course. If they also wanted to break through the spell matrix, the Wangshan watchtower did not mind. They could make use of the opportunity to see how strong the Renhuangs from the northern land were. Two completely different worlds existed within the spell matrix and outside it. At this moment, Dao attacks broke out continuously behind the spell matrix. Many strong people were attacked from outside the spell matrix, as if they were suddenly bombarded from the sky. All the human emperors who came in were doing their best, not daring to be the least bit careless. Many Renhuangs had fallen to the sudden attacks and were taken away. They were probably thrown out of the spell matrix and lost the right to enter the Wangshan watchtower to seek the Dao. Disregarding whether they could enter the Wangshan watchtower to cultivate, being thrown out like that was a rather humiliating thing for them. Yi Futian seemed to be a bit lucky. Since he stepped in the formation, he had not been attacked so far. Near him, Lin Xiao and Xiaqing Yuan had been attacked to varying degrees. He found that the strength of those Dao attacks and the realm of the people inside were matched, meaning that the other party was controlling their attacks and will not attack randomly. Otherwise, if the top people of the Wangshan watchtower attacked, how many people could withstand it? Just after Yi Futian strode forward in a relaxed manner, a powerful will might suddenly locked onto him. In the next moment, an extremely radiant divine blade of light descended from the sky. It pierced through the void directly and left a ray of light in the space. From top to bottom, the blade of light instantly engulfed Yi Futian. Just like before, this attack was a level 4 Renhuang plane strength attack, and its attack strength was one of the stronger ones in the 4th level of the Renhuang plane. Yi Futian looked up and directly eyed the blade of light descending. His pair of deep eyes as brilliant as stars were extremely calm. Even if it were a cultivator of the Wangshan watchtower, it would probably be challenging to find an existence of the same realm that could threaten him. Buzz! Yi Futian stood in place without moving. A divine blade of light directly erupted from his body, shooting upward against the trend. His body became extremely sharp, like a divine sword of the Great Way as it split the sky. The blade of light swept through, and the blade of light that shot towards him was torn apart. The Dao was annihilated. The divine sword that shot towards him was directly decimated. The blade of light that remained was the blade of light that was released from Yi Futian's body. He took a step and continued to move forward. It was as if this blade of light did not hinder him in the slightest. However, when he took a step, the firmament suddenly blossomed into a gorgeous swordsmanship haze. Lifting his head to look, he saw countless divine swords coming from beyond the sky clanging in the firmament. Many divine blades of light glowed down, making the space he was in was turned into a very strong swordsmanship space. Obviously, the Renhuang who struck him outside the spell matrix had intensified his attack, and the sword that shot toward Yi Futian was easily broken. So it must have been a bit humiliating for the person who cultivated in the Wangshan watchtower. This time, the swordsmanship aura was obviously more powerful. Buzz! Blades of light spilled down. Countless divine swords in the void turned into swordsmanship streams of light, dropping down from the firmament. Each sword turned into a ray of light. Many divine swords attacking at the same time seemed to turn into a terrifying sword matrix, like a meteor rain of swords. At this moment, it was as if Yi Futian's world had only blades of light, and was buried by this meteor sword veil. The swords were like rain, flooding Yi Futian's body. Yi Futian's white clothes fluttered, and his silver hair flew. He still stood there quietly as his body still did not move a bit. A more terrifying wisp of swordsmanship aura blossomed from his body. 10,000 swords sounded together, as if infinite sword wills were born around him, creating a powerful resonance. They formed a terrifying sword chi storm that rotated around his body. The rain of swords fell and directly entered the sword chi storm around him, and was directly swept into it, as if it had directly become a part of this swordsmanship storm, resonating here and turning into his sword. The storm was getting stronger and stronger, and the terrifying storm made the surrounding space filled with suffocating destructive power. Many people glanced towards the direction where Yi Futian was, and people outside could also see the scene inside the spell matrix. They secretly said that this Yi Futian's strength was really strong. No wonder he was so arrogant. The powerful swordsmen in training in the Wangshan Watchtower unleashed the destructive power of their swordsmanship. But the swordsmanship was directly assimilated and sucked into his sword chi storm as he suppressed his opponent's swordsmanship. This meant that Yi Futian's swordsmanship was not below his opponent's. However, because his opponent was attacking into the spell matrix through the air, it was not possible to say that Yi Futian was necessarily stronger. But even so, the vast majority of those who entered the spell matrix were passive resistors, and there were few renhuangs like Yi Futian who could directly suppress the opponent's Dao attacks. Outside the spell matrix, a swordsmanship renhuang's gaze pierced through the void and looked at Yi Futian inside the spell matrix. When Yi Futian looked up, this look gave him an illusion, as if it was looking at him through the spell matrix. Those indifferent eyes shone with a touch of extremely strong self-confidence, and he never took their attacks seriously. The renhuang had sword wheels circling his body. As he stepped out, it seemed like he was going to turn into a sword. Wait, someone interrupted said. You want to enter the spell matrix so soon? This person is pretty strong. I will go and fight him. The swordsmanship renhuang said. Interesting. Someone made you unable to resist and want to enter the spell matrix so quickly. A renhuang smiled and remarked. Your sword doesn't seem to be very good. The swordsmanship renhuang raised his head and swept his sharp gaze at his companion. He smiled as he replied, Why don't you try? Sure. He gazed at Yi Futian, who was in the spell matrix. A swordsmanship cultivator, eh? The light of the divine wheel of the great path shone on his body. An incomparably lofty war god illusion raised his arm and blasted out directly downward. In a flash, a huge hand went towards the spell formation, and a huge word appeared above this big hand. Suppress, it read. The moment the word entered the formation, the swordsmanship storm around Yi Futian stopped. The huge word slapped down, covering the sky as all the surrounding Dao was suppressed. It was as if the space he was in, and all the power in it was going to be suppressed. This space became heavier than ever. Rumble. The rune slammed down towards Yi Futian's body, as wisps of swordsmanship aura were suppressed and decimated. The sword wills around Yi Futian seemed to be suppressed by the aura of the Great Way. He swept his gaze towards the rune, then raised his hand and pointed towards the sky. In an instant, the swordsmanship storm turned into a terrifying cyclone, and 10,000 swords roared together, turning into a single sword, shooting upward against the trend. One sword was born, and 10,000 laws were destroyed. Bang! With a loud sound, the rune was destroyed directly under the sword. The radiant divine sword shot all the way up directly towards the spell matrix overhead, and directly pointed at the Wangshan Watchtower's renhuangs outside the spell matrix. However, this spell matrix was irreversible, and his sword could not get out. How arrogant! Outside, the swordsmanship renhuang looked at Yi Futian's eyes and the sword. He smiled, looking at the renhuang who had struck and said, How? Your attack, it doesn't seem to be good. That renhuang coldly snorted, and looked at Yi Futian inside the spell matrix. This guy was indeed not simple. He was able to break their Dao attack directly, and it seemed that defeating him through the spell matrix would be a little difficult, unless they personally entered the spell matrix. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 1973, Barging In. Chapter 1973. Barging In. Yi Futian continued to move forward after breaking through the foreign Dao attacks. His white clothes were fluttering, and he looked dashing and unrestrained. In the surroundings, many people were looking at Yi Futian. This person is powerful. Although he was arrogant and disregarded everyone, he did have the strength to back it up. Otherwise, he would not dare to be so reckless. But even so, his phrase "the rabble" offended many people from the different factions. It probably would not be so easy for him to enter the Wangshan Watchtower to cultivate. Only then, several people came towards the direction where Yi Futian was, vaguely forming a closed circle around Yi Futian, causing those watching the battle outside the spell matrix to reveal a flash of puzzlement. It seemed these people were going to make a move on Yi Futian. They needed to break through the spell matrix to enter the Wangshan watchtower. During this period, there were no laws, and any means could be used. The Wangshan watchtower did not make any laws. Of course, the Wangshan watchtower Renhuang's outside of the spell matrix was, in fact, secretly controlling all of this. Even if there were no laws, they were able to control the situation inside. For example, they could decide whether or not to attack the Renhuang inside. And they could also decide what level of people would launch the attack, and against whom. That would enable them to directly influence the battlefield within the spell matrix. If inside, there was a battle between strong people with obvious realm gaps, and people of higher realms moved against Renhuangs of lower realms, Wangshan watchtower cultivators would normally intervene, and directly launch an attack against the higher realm Renhuangs, which the people of Wangdu understood. If some of the Renhuangs in the spell matrix broke out to fight with each other, then at that time, the Renhuangs of the Wangshan watchtower over the spell matrix would instead stop striking, and would let them fight on their own, as long as the difference in realm was not too great. Therefore, those who were walking towards Yi Futian did not have any psychological pressure. According to their speculation, before Yi Futian had showed extraordinary fighting power. So even if several of them were to strike against him at the same time, the people outside would not interfere. As they guessed, the strong people outside the spell formation stopped attacking when they saw someone walking towards Yi Futian, and they were curious about Yi Futian's strength, so they wanted to use this opportunity to take a look. The Renhuangs who were walking towards Yi Futian were all the Renhuangs who were in the Heavenly Battle Palace that day. All of them were forces that had a better relationship with the Alchemy Divine Palace. 2 Renhuangs of the 4th realm and 2 of the 5th realm approached Yi Futian from different directions. The moment their auras of the Great Way erupted, an oppressive to the extreme Great Path domain was formed with Yi Futian's body as the center. They really are nobodies. Yi Futian continued to move forward without paying attention, but Lin Qiu and the rest had already struck. The 3 of them moved directly towards their opponents. Seeing this scene, more Renhuangs were surging to this side. Instead of fighting with the Renhuangs outside the Wangshan watchtower, fighting with people here was the same. Yi Futian also had many strong people around him. All of them were cultivators who followed the Alchemy Emperor from the Taiyuan continent. Let me see how strong the cultivators of the Tower of the Alchemy Emperor are. At this time, a voice came out, and a figure appeared in the void. It was clearly the Alchemy Divine Palace's disciple Zhongfan. He was the demonic figure, who was refining pills with Grandmaster Zihe that day. When his aura of the Great Way was released, the flames of the way enveloped this void. Their power was terrifying, and they made the temperature of the whole space climb sharply. Zifeng! Yi Futian shouted. He had no intention to make a move himself. Beside Yi Futian, the long phoenix skirt on Zifeng's body flew. A pair of divine wings suddenly appeared behind her. Terrifying flames of the way filled her body, and at this moment, she was incomparably gorgeous, like a phoenix goddess. In a flash, she caused many cultivators to look at her. What a strong aura! Those Renhuangs were trembling inside. And the next moment, they saw the gorgeous phoenix wings flickering and moving. Buzz! The raging divine fire directly engulfed the void, and as Zhongfan stood there, he saw his body wrapped in an illusory Great Path domain. An incomparably huge divine bird phoenix appeared in this Great Path domain, covering the sky and flooding this space. A loud and clear call of the phoenix sounded, stinging his eardrums, and Zhongfan only felt his spiritual soul tremble as the huge divine phoenix's wings swept out. Poof! Zhongfan's power of the Great Way was cut and shattered as blood spurted out. A bloody wound was torn out from his body as he was sent flying. If not for Zifeng not going for the kill, he would probably be unable to resist her attacks and be dead by now. This is a phoenix and it's so strong. Many people were shocked. Zifeng's body floated in the air. As her wings beat behind her back, that boundless huge phoenix shadow covered the sky, enveloping the boundless space. Another call of the phoenix sounded, and those Renhuangs who came towards Yi Futian all saw a phoenix shadow grabbing towards them. The suffocating power of the Great Way made them feel unable to resist. The sounds of poofing continued. Just as they felt, figures were directly slapped out as they spit blood, and their faces turned pale. Even Lin Xiao and the others froze. Their bodies floated in the air as they stared blankly at Zifeng. Had she finished doing what she wanted to do? Before, Zifeng had been quietly following Yi Futian, and had not shown her aura, let alone her strength. No one knew how strong she was, yet this sudden outburst made everyone freeze. The phoenix goddess who followed behind Yi Futian was so strong? The body of Zifeng was still suspended in the air. She gazed around the crowd, and her pair of gorgeous divine phoenix eyes dazzled with the flames of the way, noble and cold. They were filled with contempt for everyone, as if to confirm the words of Yi Futian before. At that time, if Zifeng attacked, they would not necessarily lose to that Renhuang from the northern land. Did Yi Futian need to avoid him on purpose? Perhaps, he indeed had not wanted to participate in the battle. If you want to attack later, find some guys with a higher cultivation level. These guys are not worthy of my attention, Yi Futian remarked while sweeping a glance at the crowd and ignoring the strong people. As to who he was talking about, he would let the other side interpret it for themselves. As long as they were hostile to him, then naturally they were all included. He did not even seem to care about all the mighty figures in the entire Dongxiao continent. Yi Futian continued to move forward as he spoke, and the strong people around him also followed him. At this time, even the Wangshan watchtower Renhuangs outside the spell matrix were also shocked. Many Renhuangs stared down and spoke. Interesting. Want to go down for a walk? It was impossible to truly feel how strong Zifeng's combat power was here. Only by entering the spell matrix and colliding head-on could they know. On top of that, how strong Yi Futian was likewise a mystery. Although he had countered the two Renhuang's attacks before, no one knew how much strength he had used. Don't rush. They're going in. Some people looked into the distance. Outside the Wangshan watchtower, those strong people who came from the northern land were already moving. The person at the head of the group gazed in the direction of the Wangshan watchtower and said, "We came from the northern land to visit Senior Millet Emperor. Use the ancient road and enter the spell matrix with the Renhuangs of the Dongxiao continent to receive the test of the Great Way." After saying that, they did not wait for the permission of the people of the Wangshan watchtower and directly stepped forward into the spell matrix. The other strong people outside showed a flash of strange color. The cultivators of the northern land forcefully stepped into the spell matrix. Coupled with the previous battle in the Heavenly Battle Palace, they were going to show the cultivators of the Dongxiao continent who was boss. The moment the Renhuangs of the northern land stepped into the spell matrix, they immediately and simultaneously unleashed a strong aura of the Great Way, heading forward. They are going. The people outside saw many people directly release their divine wheels of the Great Path. Several figures were stepping in the void and sprinting extremely fast above the spell matrix. They were like heavenly gods. With each step, they shattered the sky and earth, and the spell matrix space violently shook. Among them, the mighty figure from the Northern Land's sovereign family was first to go in battle in the Heavenly Battle Palace that day. Those sprinting in the air were cultivators of the sovereign family, and they all specialized in the same skill. Boom! At that moment, the crowd only saw several people stepping on the void at the same time. They stepped directly towards the Renhuangs in the spell formation. It was as though a boundless huge stone pillar had flattened this space. Those Renhuangs, who were attacked instantly, unleashed their powers of the Great Way to resist. But under the huge footprints, the Great Way directly collapsed and shattered. Booming violent sounds came out as several Renhuangs were directly trampled under the feet and seriously injured. Sure enough, this was to provoke trouble. This time, the Northern Land sent a group of their top Renhuangs to deal with the Dongxiao continent's Renhuangs. These people who arrived were the most powerful cultivators of the Northern Land. In the Matrix, a Renhuang turned around to look at those who killed the Renhuangs inside. Their faces had changed. Was the last law battle of the Heavenly Battle Palace an early rehearsal? This time, they got serious and started a team fight. The elderly man with an immortal aura and Taoist bones swept his gaze inside the spell matrix. A sharp glint also flashed between his eyes. Beside him, someone looked towards him and asked, "Do you want to go in?" Obviously, he was asking if he needed the cultivators of the Wangshan watchtower to barge inside and start a war with the other side. They used seeking the way as an excuse to enter the spell matrix. Although they attacked ruthlessly, they held back a little, did not look to kill, and knew their limits. "Since that's the case, let's wait and see," the elderly man remarked. Such a battle could allow them to see whether there was anyone worthy of the teachings of the Millet Emperor among the Renhuangs, who entered the spell matrix this time. Yes. Next to him, the person nodded without saying anything more, and continued to look at that spell matrix battlefield. "If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible." Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 1974, One Punch. Chapter 1974. One Punch. The roar of the Great Path's violent resonance continued to erupt inside the matrix, and Run Huang from the northern land rushed into it, initiating the vicious battle. The cultivators of various forces in the Dongxiao continent no longer fought against one another, but were united against the outside force. Otherwise, they would all suffer miserably. After the cultivators from the northern land had initiated their attack, they discovered that the cultivators from Wangshan Watchtower, who were watching outside the matrix, no longer interfered. Its significance was not lost. This was essentially handing the battlefield over to them as a kind of assessment. The matrix itself was Wangshan Watchtower's test to them. To enter the Wangshan Watchtower to cultivate, one must pass the matrix. Except that the assessment this time was a little different. Run Huang from the northern land had replaced the Run Huang of Wangshan Watchtower, entering the matrix's battlefield to participate in the battle. The cultivators from Qinhe Palace did not continue their attack on Yi Futian and his party. They now turned their attention to the Run Huang, who were attacking violently. Many people were already on the move, and each of them had found opponents of a comparable realm and started a law battle within the bounds of the matrix. For a moment, the space inside the matrix seemed about to fall apart, on the brink of a complete riot that could crush the sky and the earth. The cultivators outside the Wangshan Watchtower were observing the dizzying battles that erupted at the same time. They wanted to watch each battle in detail and didn't want to miss anything, but the actions were too fast for this great battle that exploded at the same time in different battle locations. The only choice was to pick a battlefield to observe with a glance at the other battlefields from time to time. After all, divine consciousness was unable to invade inside the matrix, so they could only watch it with their naked eyes. "These Run Huang from the northern land are quite wild," someone remarked. "Well, the cultivators from the ancient royal family of the Yin Kingdom have come here in person. That young man in the lead is surrounded by many cultivators, so he must be a royal member of the ancient royal family from the Yin Kingdom, leading a group of Run Huang to seek the way. If so, they must have selected the strongest among their people. But we are different. Many of our powerful people have already entered Wangshan Watchtower before, or they are currently cultivating at Wangshan Watchtower. This time, only some of these powerful men had entered the matrix, not a carefully selected elite as the other party. Someone who was more rational saw the key to the battle. They had the opportunity to enter Wangshan Watchtower every year, and many powerful men had entered to cultivate one time or another. This year, there were just some excellent characters who attended. However, it was a different story with the other party. Led by the ancient royal family of the Yin Kingdom, they must be commanding a powerful group of Run Huang from all the top forces in Yinyan continent to descend upon the city. From this standpoint, they were at a disadvantage. Under such fierce attacks, I am afraid they will be entirely wiped out. A cultivator frowned. They were from some of the major forces in Wangdu, and many elders from these forces did not enter the matrix, and they had a bad feeling when they saw the progression on the battlefield. The Run Huang from the northern land had great momentum, and were extremely ferocious. In different realms, they had been able to cause considerable destruction. This battle was somewhat similar to the law battle at the Heavenly Battle Palace that day. It was as if the battle on that day was the dress rehearsal of the great battle today. The cultivators from the Alchemy Divine Palace gathered in one area, but in a scattered formation. After all, their realm varied. Qi Mu, the heir of the Alchemy Divine Palace, stood in the center. He glanced at those imposing Run Huang from the northern land, then turned around to look behind him, where Yi Futian and the others were positioned. Because Yi Futian and his party were traveling the fastest, so that Yi Futian was in the rearmost position when they turned around. In another direction, there were the cultivators from the Heavenly Battle Palace, where Yang Qian, the leader of the Heavenly Battle Palace, was standing there. He had a terrifying aura about him. An extremely tyrannical fighting was surrounding him. He glanced at Yi Futian and the locations of other cultivators, such as Qi Mu of the Alchemy Divine Palace. He said, "You had differences in opinions regarding the affairs that occurred at the Heavenly Battle Palace, but that is all in the past. Now that the cultivators from the northern land have invaded Wangshan Watchtower and Dongshan Continent, as nothing with no one to protect it, I'm asking everyone to put aside previous grudges temporarily and face this foe together." Qi Mu and other cultivators from Alchemy Divine Palace looked at Yi Futian and the others, only to hear him say, "I have no opinion." Clearly, he had also felt the might of the other party. Any further internal conflicts would inevitably cause more damages to either party, resulting in their disqualifications. "What does Emperor Yi think?" Yang Qian asked Yi Futian. "Not interested," Yi Futian replied, calm and nonchalant. He glanced at the cultivators of the northern land, who had come from afar. No one could stop him from seeing the Millet Emperor, not even those cultivators who came from the Yinyan continent of the north. He did need to partner up with anyone, especially not those people who had meant to do him harm earlier. When the cultivators around him heard his words, their eyes sharpened slightly. They had already made concessions and gave him a way out, but still, Yi Futian was so arrogant. Yang Qian frowned, a little displeased, and said, "Emperor Yi, although there were some misunderstandings previously, the important thing now is the situation at hand." "The situation at hand?" Yi Futian looked at the other. "I remembered I told you before that I am not from Wangdu, nor am I a cultivator of Dongshan Continent." Yang Qian had nothing to say when he heard what Yi Futian had to say. Yi Futian was serious. He still saw himself as a separate entity from Dongshan Continent, not with the other cultivators. When Lin Qiu heard Yi Futian's words, he couldn't help but smiled and said, "Before, when there were no cultivators from the northern land, you had joined forces to fight against him, drawing a clear boundary. Now that the people from the northern land are here, you wanted to leverage his power? How quickly you change your tune. You think you are so much better than everyone else," some cultivators remarked next to Lin Qiu and Yi Futian. Even at a time like this, they were still acting like this had nothing to do with them. Not far from the sky above, the terrifying aura of the Great Path permeated, and several Renhuang attacked in this direction. One of them was the cultivator from the northern land royal family. He glanced at Yi Futian and recalled that he had seen this man before, on that day when they entered the Heavenly Battle Palace. At the time, this man evaded battle and left soon after. "No need to argue. We are all going out. It seems that we should go to the Millet Emperor for advice." The royal cultivator sounded domineering, golden light shining upon his body. An overpowering might spread out as he stepped forward. Heaven and earth boomed, and the void trembled. Besides him, there were many cultivators around who struck from different directions at the same time. Buzz. Qi Mu of the Alchemy Divine Palace drifted backward without any intention to engage in battle, and the rest of the cultivators from the Alchemy Divine Palace followed his example. Other cultivators retreated when they saw their action and gave up their positions as well, an act that caught many by surprise. After they backed away, Yi Futian was facing squarely at the other party. In other words, Yi Futian and his people were directly facing these cultivators from the northern land. Sensing the aura coming from Yi Futian, the cultivator who belonged to the royal family from the northern land swept a glance at him. A touch of dominance flashed in those eyes as he took a step that made the void tremble. It was as if he could step through the void. That day Yi Futian avoided the battle. Today where would he go? Qi Mu and the others were looking at Yi Futian as well. This time he could not avoid it, and he must fight no matter what. If he didn't want to join them, then he must face it alone. A contemptuous sneer flashed through the eyes of that northern land Renhuang. His figure flickered, and landed a little slanted above Yi Futian and the others. The divine glory of the great path exploded from his body, and a mighty pressure slammed down that created an oppressive, suffocating coercion of the great path in this vast space. A boundless and heavy might now enveloped Yi Futian. In the next moment, a towering figure like a god of war appeared. Like a divine wheel of the great path, this war godlike figure overlooked the sky below, as one of his feet stomped down from above. A horrific loud rumbling sound was heard that seemed to shatter heaven and earth. A golden stone pillar appeared, pulverizing the void, flattening one corner of the sky. Shockingly, it was the foot of the other, which, like golden lightning falling from the sky, stepped directly on Yi Futian. Yi Futian raised his head to look at the foot that was stomping down at him. Above his body, a majestic aura of the great path permeated. When his eyes swept toward the sky, a most radiant aurora of the sword seemed to shot out from his eyes while his entire body filled with immense power. At this moment, it seemed that the world was resonating with his body, and an unparalleled momentum burst from him. Though he stood there casually, he gave an illusion of total invincibility. In the void, that royal cultivator from the northern land felt an invisible threat as well. Looking at those eyes filled with extreme confidence, it as if his opponent did not pay any attention to his aggressive attack. When the footprint of the war god landed, the radiant beam of the towering stone pillar attempted to penetrate Yi Futian's body. But at this time, Yi Futian raised his arm and threw a punch at that footprint. The sound of elephant trumpeting was heard between heaven and earth. It was the divine elephant that rocked the sky. With this one punch, the great path collapsed, and the space shattered. The crowd saw that the beam of light formed by the footprints of the great path readily split in two, and the dazzling light of the great path radiated in all directions. A light beam went up against all odds, and though the stone pillar continued to collapse, the light was still traveling upward, until it finally descending on the foot of the god of war. Boom! An astonishing and violent explosion was heard. The foot of the war god exploded and shattered. Then, the phantom of the war god started showing cracks, and seemed to be exploding as well. The terrible power from that punch was mighty. It blasted directly on the body of the royal cultivator in the void. He made a muffled groaning sound, and then his body was thrown back as he spat out a trace of blood in the void. Yi Futian stood where he was. It was as if he hadn't moved at all. He lowered his arms as every Renhuang's attention now focused on him. His line of sight was directed at the northern Renhuang in the sky above. There was a brilliant golden brilliance blooming above his body. In an instant, the golden light filled the sky, like the light of Buddhism, with the endless sound of Buddha ringing in the air. The Renhuang from the northern land frowned. He felt a force similar to his own power of the great path. As his eyes surveyed the land beneath him, suddenly, his expression changed, and he became extremely fierce and wild. A giant beast that was extremely wild appeared above the sky, like a real dragon, but also like a lion, with 4 hoofs, standing above the firmament, as a roar came out of its bloody basin of a mouth. Countless sound waves of the great path swept through the space like endless sharp swords of the sound wave. It tore through the void and shattered spiritual souls. In just an instant, Yi Futian's body seemed to be submerged by invisible sound waves. At the same time, the Renhuang on both sides also launched an attack of the great path on Yi Futian. Cultivators from all 3 sides attacked Yi Futian simultaneously. How unforgiving! Many who were outside fixed their attention on the battlefield where Yi Futian was at. Because of his independent ways, he was now being attacked by both forces. Men from Dongxiao continent and the cultivators from the northern land were now fighting against him. But at this moment, the golden divine brilliance on Yi Futian was getting even more radiant, as sounds of Buddha was heard, and a Buddhist aura lingered in the air. Get away! With a loud shout accompanied by the roar of the terrifying beast, an infinite and domineering Buddha suddenly appeared above the sky. It was Vajra demon-slaying rhythm. The infinite ancient Buddha released the endless glory of Buddhism, rocking the mountains and rivers. The Buddha's light and rhythm pierced the beast, and then its body was pulverized. Not only that, the spiritual souls of that northern Renhuang, and the other two Renhuang, who attacked Yi Futian trembled violently, as if they might collapse and pulverize at any time, while the great path was also destroyed. A rustling sound was heard, and with the blooming of the Vajra demon-slaying rhythm, a giant divine tree appeared above Yi Futian's head. Numerous branches and leaves spread out, and captured the other three Renhuang in an instant. The power of the great path wanted to smash through, but these leaves were extremely resilient, locking their bodies in place within the void. The branches and vines furled, and three figures were being wrapped up and delivered in front of Yi Futian. Yi Futian glanced at them, and his indifferent eyes made them realize that even if their cultivation was stronger than Yi Futian, they were not his equal after all. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1976, 7th Realm? Chapter 1976, 7th Realm? Yi Futian looked at the three figures that were wrapped in the leaves and branches. His eyes were cold and indifferent. It was as if he had never taken them seriously. The three struggled within the grasps of the branches and vines, trying to loosen their holds, but more sounds of rustling were heard as the branches and leaves that kept the three prisoners slammed straight down and smashed them directly into the ground. Their bodies seemed to be pierced through as muffled sounds of groaning were heard. It was rather abusive. It was clear by now that the two sides were not on the same level. All the Renhuang who were battling around them were greatly shocked as they watched the situation unfold, especially the cultivators from other forces, such as Alchemy Divine Palace. They would have never expected Yi Futian to be this powerful. All three Renhuang were from major forces. One was a cultivator from the northern land, and the other two were of the 6th realm. But none of them were unable to fight back. They were so easily manipulated by Yi Futian. Clearly to him they were not opponents at all. Was this something that could have been achieved by a middle Renhuang of the 4th realm? Divine Wheel. His aura of the Great Path was so overpowering. Was it possible that his Great Path was flawless, and that he possessed the perfect Divine Wheel? At this moment, a divine light twinkled above the sky, and an upper Renhuang of the 7th realm appeared above Yi Futian. It was an upper Renhuang cultivator from the Qinhe Palace. A few of the people controlled by Yi Futian were his companions. Can he resist cultivator of the 7th realm? Many wondered silently. Even on the outside, most of the people were looking at Yi Futian's area of battle. Yi Futian had been a hot topic before he entered the Matrix. Many people were especially focused on him. Now that Yi Futian had demonstrated such strength in the battle, it was inevitable that he was attracting all the attention, and even more eyes were trained on him. Not just them, but even many of the cultivators from Wangshan Watchtower were looking at Yi Futian at this moment. The old man in the lead was sitting there as he was before. As his eyes focused on Yi Futian inside the matrix, he asked, "Who knows who this man is?" This man goes by the name of Yi Liunian. It is said that he came with the Alchemy Emperor. Previously, he had caused some disturbances in the Heavenly Battle Palace. Some suspected that the Alchemy Emperor was his master, but he denies it. However, in my estimation, this man did not come from the tower of the Alchemy Emperor of Taiyuan continent. Someone said as he was walking over to where the old man was sitting. Then where do you think he was from? The old man did not care too much about the outside world's affairs, and didn't know of the news regarding Yi Futian, hence his inquiry. Eastern Deity Island, that Renhong replied. A flash passed through the old man's eyes as he looked into the distance. I see. So it seems that she had sent him to Wangshan Watchtower to cultivate. It must be. The Renhuang next to him nodded. Their mutual understanding needed no further clarification. Goddess Donglai did not publicize Yi Futian's identity. She took Yi Futian to see the Millet Emperor immediately. However, as the #1 principality in Dongxiao continent, the cultivators from Wangshan Watchtower could still make out a thing or two about many events that had happened. Of course, they only guessed that Yi Futian had come from Eastern Deity Island, but didn't know that he was the heir of Supreme Being Donglai. "Let's see if the upper Runhuang of 7th Realm could do any better," said the old man, looking at the battlefield. The upper Runhuang of the 7th Realm had already released the coercion of the Great Path and was ready to attack. When that cultivator of 7th Realm unleashed the coercion of the Way, the vast and endless void was filled with a suffocating oppressive force. Yi Futian looked up in the sky and saw that many additional phantoms now surrounded the opponent. In an instant, there were thousands of them, standing above the sky and surrounding the void. Each phantom was akin to a figure of the war god. How horrific would it be when these thousands of phantoms unleashed the coercion of the Great Path at the same time? It seemed that Yi Futian was in a desperate situation and was about to be buried in that space. But those cultivators watching the battle from the outside were shocked. An upper Renhuang of 7th Realm now took action, but without any interference from Wangshan Watchtower. It was as if they had given their permission in silence to allow Yi Futian to deal with an opponent of the 7th Realm. Renhuang 4th Realm was classified as the first realm of Middle Renhuang, and 7th Realm was already Upper Renhuang. There was an entire level separating the two. Could Yi Futian still have a chance in such a battle? As an Upper Renhuang, it is a little unfair to fight against you. If you can withstand one strike from me, I will stop, said the Upper Renhuang of 7th Realm in the void, loud and clear. His voice resounded throughout the void. It was as if his many phantoms were speaking simultaneously, which caused countless echoes between heaven and the earth. His voice lingered in the sky, reverberating in everyone's ears for quite a while. Yi Futian raised his head to look at the other. How could he be so hypocritical? One strike. This was probably going to be the most powerful strike ever. Your guys already showed that no lowly tactics are off-limit in battle, so why bother to pretend to be so generous? Yi Futian said sarcastically. In this law battle of the Matrix, what could victory mean when someone in the 7th Realm was fighting against someone in the 4th Realm? The original intention of this trip had already been violated. This was now purely an attack aimed at Yi Futian. If that was the case, there was no need to dress it up. Of course, I don't care how many times you attack me. In front of me, you are not in a position to say what you just said, Yi Futian remarked sarcastically. As soon as his voice fell, his body levitated into the air, and an astonishing aura of the Great Path was released. A golden divine light glittered upon his body, and a Buddha seemed to have appeared. The sound of Buddha lingered. It was as if there were endless Buddhist characters flying out, resounding everywhere between heaven and earth. Everyone's ears were filled with the rhythm of Buddha, and in their mind, an ancient Buddha seemed to have manifested. Since you are so shameless as to allow an Upper Renhuang to launch the attack, don't blame me for being merciless, Yi Futian said softly, completely stunning everyone as they looked at him in astonishment. No mercy? Was this an appropriate thing to say to an Upper Renhuang of the 7th Realm? How arrogant. Not far away, Goddess Emperor Yi of Goddess Peak regarded Yi Futian with her beautiful eyes. This was the most conceited Renhuang she had ever seen. His ostentation was not expressed in his attitude, but implicitly through his action and speech. But he did have actual strength to back up his sense of superiority. However, at this moment, he was facing a powerful existence of the 7th Realm. Could he also crush it with the Great Path? Be careful. This man is a powerful Renhuang at Qinhe Palace. His attacks are extremely fierce. He can will thousands of phantoms attacking at the same time, so its offensive power would multiply manifold. Don't be careless. Yi Futian heard a voice, and it was Goddess Emperor Yi who had transmitted the message to him. Yi Futian glanced at the other person from the corner of his eyes, only to see Emperor Yi appear as she was, quietly watching the battlefield where the two were located. Perhaps this warning was a sign of her goodwill toward him. He did not respond. The coercion of the Great Path from the cultivator of the 7th Realm in the void was getting stronger. Thousands of phantoms seemed to resonate with the Great Path. A domineering power of the Great Path emerged from each of the phantoms, suppressing this space. The entire void felt an immeasurable heaviness, as it was shrouded and oppressed by an invisible pressure of the Great Path. Any ordinary Renhuang standing inside this space would suffocate. Yi Futian stood there with his usual expression, but he had felt a trace of pressure nonetheless. The feeling was like a corner of the sky was about to collapse and crush on top of him. Above Yi Futian, a divine tree appeared, expanding at a terrifying speed. In a few short moments, the elusive aura of the ancient tree was everywhere in this vast world, as if a divine tree had been planted here, turning it into a domain of the great path. Bang! A muffled sound came out, as thousands of phantoms stepping at the same time above the firmament, a golden brilliance bloomed upon their bodies. They had the same movement, raising their arms as golden light screens flowed upon those arms. They were tinged with the terrifying breath of shattering the great path. Finally, under countless gazes, the other man moved with the many phantoms that moved at the same time in the same fashion. They delivered a blow downward, and in that instant, this corner of the sky seemed on the verge of collapsing. The crowd saw the phantoms of the Sky Lord running through the void, blasting their attacks at Yi Futian. Simultaneously, a horrific invisible sound wave swept out, causing those phantoms to explode, and then pulverized. Many wore a shocked expression on their faces as they beheld this unbelievable scene in awe. The greatest sound was usually inaudible. They could not hear the sound of this sound wave, but they could feel it. In the space shrouded by the ancient tree, an exquisitely cold and dark aura appeared in the domain of the great path, which froze those elusive phantoms that had dove downward, turning them into icy frost. Before the attacks had reached Yi Futian, they had already turned to ice. The crowd saw Yi Futian's body slowly levitating, and a terrifying storm of swordsmanship appeared around him. Wherever he passed, those elusive phantoms continued to shatter and explode. Thousands of phantoms dissipated at a breakneck speed, and in a short time, everything had turned into dust. Soon, the Renhuang of the seventh realm appeared in person. He looked at what was happening in front of him in utter horror, as all the external phantoms of obfuscation turned into dust and disappeared in an instant. However, he had no time to be in shock. Before he knew it, a sword with flawless swordsmanship had arrived in front of him. Boom! A wildly violent power of the great path exploded fiercely as his body turned into an indestructible golden form, suppressing the great path with its power. Both of his fists blast through the air to block the sword strike. As the sword fell, a sharp sizzling sound was heard. This sword seemed to have integrated thousands of sword wool between heaven and earth, converging them into a single sword. The golden form shattered, and the fists emerged bloodied. The sword continued traveling forward, slashing the arms. It slammed into the body of the great path above. Cracks appeared as a golden divine glory was observed by the crowd. In the next moment, the sword finally stopped, but that Renhuang of the seventh realm was knocked out into the faraway distance, standing motionlessly, with blood spurting from his chest. His body was filled with terrifying, destructive sword will. Is this your strike? Chapter 1977, Decimated. Chapter 1977. Decimated. Was a 7th-tier cultivator very powerful? Even when an upper-level Renhuang attacked, he still lost to Yi Futian without any suspense. Yi Futian's combat ability was absolutely terrifying. Both inside and outside of the matrix, many cultivators were speechless. Only now did they understand why Yi Futian was so proud. Recalling the day when Heavenly Battle Palace invited Yi Futian over, they actually wanted to challenge him to a law battle. Maybe in Yi Futian's eyes, all of them were laughing stocks. With Yi Futian's combat ability, their law battles were not worth his time. Looking back now, it was indeed a mockery to Yi Futian. Even many Renhuangs from the northern land looked over to where Yi Futian stood. This person's ability was very powerful. There was a serious look in their gazes. However, right now Yi Futian ignored what the crowd was thinking of him. He glanced around at the crowd. With a stomp, his figure shot up into the sky. He stood in the space high above the matrix, the light of Buddha circling him. In the sky above, a gigantic Buddha appeared. Buddhist voices circled the Buddha, and could be heard by everyone present. What was he doing? Many people only saw a Buddha when they looked over. Right then, Yi Futian had become a Buddha. Aside from that, tens of thousands of swords hummed around Yi Futian's figure. Endless sword will float out, enveloping the endless space. It became a powerful sword will of the great path. On this battlefield, many people could clearly sense the power of the sword will. In a corner, Qi Mu raised his head and looked at the currents of swordsmanship flowing in the sky. His clothes fluttered in the wind. If this sword will was aimed at him, how would he block it? The powerful sword will flowed over his head and flooded this part of the sky. It enveloped an even larger region. Not just him, but many cultivators of Alchemy Divine Palace were all enveloped within. Many people frowned. There were even many people who stopped fighting and watched Yi Futian. This fellow had released such a powerful aura. What was he planning to do? When they looked towards Yi Futian, his figure was floating up into the sky. Buddhist voices of the Great Path circled him and the surrounding space. The Buddhist voices seemed to form countless Buddhist runes that shot out in different directions. Since all of you want a law battle so badly, I will grant you your wish, Yi Futian said. As he said this, the Buddha let out an angry shout. Terrifying sound waves of the Great Path swept out, generating formless way of sonic wave. It swept across the endless space. The vast space within the matrix was completely enveloped by the sound wave attack. Tui, a few cultivators from Qinhe Palace nearest to Yi Futian, were immediately sent flying backward. They let out dull groans, and their faces were pale. Their spiritual souls were shaken, and some of them immediately fell over and fainted. Some coughed up mouthfuls of fresh blood. They seemed malaised, and their figures trembled uncontrollably. Was Yi Futian attacking everyone? The people outside were astonished as they watched this scene. Yi Futian naturally would not attack everyone, only targeting the cultivators from the forces of Wangdu, who wanted to attack him before, and those who had already attacked him. Before this, he had ignored the other party and went on the defensive. However, the other party was persistent and challenged him again and again. Since they loved law battles so much, Yi Futian would grant their wish. Splattering sounds of cultivators coughing up blood could be heard continuously. Those below the upper-level Renhuang Plain could not withstand the power of the sound wave of the Great Path. All of them were severely injured. Even a monstrous Renhuang from Alchemy Divine Palace like Qi Mu remained standing on his spot, unable to move as he withstood the attack of the frightening sound wave of the Great Path. His clothes fluttered in the wind. A divine Buddha seemed to appear in his mind, angrily roaring at him. The Vajra demon-slaying rhythm was repressing him and forcing him to submit. His entire person was stiff. When he looked at Yi Futian, Qi Mu had a deep sense of fear in his eyes. Only now did he understand that, besides pill-concocting ability, even in combat, he was no match for Yi Futian at all. At that moment, currents of swordsmanship flowed in the heavens above. They tore apart the space, attacking once again after the sound wave attack. "Please have mercy," someone shouted. It was a cultivator from Wangdu. He could not take it anymore. Sword will of the Great Path descended instantly and pierced through his figure. They left behind streaks of blood. He let out a dull groan. His body was covered in blood as his figure fell to the ground. The sword will seriously injured him, immediately causing him to lose the ability to fight. The sword will kept flowing, frenziedly rampaging all over the battlefield. Very soon, silhouettes fell from the sky one by one. They were all heavily injured by the sword will. Divine fire of the Great Path surrounded Qi Mu. Yet the dazzling currents of swordsmanship immediately penetrated the divine fire. It was as though the sword will could not be extinguished. Qi Mu's body released frightening currents of the Great Path to block the swords. But as a cold sword will descended, he let out a dull groan as his defenses were shattered. Bang! With a loud bang, Qi Mu's figure was sent flying out. Swords descended upon him again. The sound of blood gushing out filled the air. Very soon, this inheritor of Alchemy Divine Palace also could not withstand the attack anymore. He was severely injured, and his clothes were dyed red with blood. His limp body fell to the ground. "He is not," the Alchemy Emperor replied calmly. "Then, where is he from?" asked the other party. The Alchemy Emperor glanced at him. His gaze suddenly became extremely sharp. Was an elder of Alchemy Divine Palace in the position to act so presumptuous towards him? "Are you questioning me?" asked the Alchemy Emperor as a powerful pressure emanated from his body. His long robes actually fluttered even though there was no wind. This made the other party realize their place. I was merely curious. May Alchemy Emperor clear things up for us, the other party continued saying. However, Alchemy Emperor ignored the other party. He swept an indifferent glance at the other party before shifting his gaze away. He continued looking at the matrix. Even he was not clear as to the extent of Yi Futian's abilities. Only Goddess Donglai, who was standing behind him, knew. Yi Futian's power was beyond his expectations. He decimated the various cultivators single-handedly. Alchemy Emperor, you still have connections to the Dongxiao continent. The person whom you have brought here is acting in such a manner. Don't you think it is inappropriate? Questioned an elder from Qinhe Palace, an ugly expression on his face. They had suffered heavy losses and were almost completely wiped out. Should I instruct him to stand there and allow the members of Qinhe Palace to beat him up without retaliating? Retorted Alchemy Emperor as he swept a cold look at the other party. He replied, you have cultivated for so many years and are of a ripe old age. Yet, such words can be uttered from that mouth of yours? The other party had a displeased look on their face, but they could not retort. After all, their members had attacked Yi Futian first, but instead faced a bloodbath now. If this continues, the Run Huang of the northern land will act even more unscrupulously, commented a cultivator from Heavenly Battle Palace as he looked at the battlefield. If they did not have this conflict before, and Yi Futian was on their side, he would have been a great asset. Such a shame. Now their Dongxiao continent forces were facing a bloodbath, making things even easier for the Renhuangs of the northern land. No matter how powerful Yi Futian was, he was still only one man. Among the cultivators from the northern land, there were also the forces of the royal family of the Yinyan continent. The cultivators of the great Yin ancient royal family had personally arrived. Those who have been eliminated would have been useless even if they remained. Now on the battlefield, there are still cultivators from the Wangshan Watchtower. In addition to Yi Futian, their lineup will not be weaker than that of the Renhuangs from the northern land. They just happen to eliminate the useless folk, the Alchemy Emperor commented. His monotonous voice contained a hint of mockery. Many cultivators from Qinhe Palace, as well as Alchemy Divine Palace, looked towards Alchemy Emperor. Chapter 1978. Who could contend? Chapter 1978. Who could contend? After Yi Futian decimated the cultivators, he instantly became the absolute focus of everyone inside the matrix. He was more eye-catching than even the cultivators of the Great Yin Ancient Royal Family. Right now, even Yin Dongyang from Great Yin Ancient Royal Family was looking over where Yi Futian was. He revealed a look of interest. He never imagined that he would encounter such a figure while making his way through Wangshan Watchtower Matrix. This person should be a middle-level Renhuang with a flawless great path, who still maintained a flawless divine wheel after breaking through to the next plane. Only then could he have such explosive combat ability that could instantly kill a 7th-tier existence. Let alone among the cultivators of the Dongxiao continent in Wangdu, even among the cultivators led by Yin Dongyang, and there was no one of the same level as Yi Futian. None of them was a match for him unless Yin Dongyang himself personally went against Yi Futian. As a person who similarly had a flawless divine wheel of the Great Path, Yin Dongyang naturally knew how powerful and frightening such a figure's combat ability could be. Yin Dongyang initially believed that he would only encounter such figures after entering into Wangshan Watchtower. He never imagined that he would meet one in the Matrix. He should be the person, said Yin Dongyang as he revealed a meaningful smile. It was as though he had already figured out Yi Futian's identity. It was not just him. The cultivators of the Wangshan Watchtower, who entered into the Matrix, also looked at Yi Futian. A Renhuang said, with a flawless divine wheel of the Great Path, why did you have to go through all this trouble to enter Wangshan Watchtower? If you had come sooner, you could still enter into the Watchtower. No force would reject a figure of his level. It was the same for the Wangshan Watchtower. Yi Futian might even have the chance to meet the Millet Emperor. Yi Futian looked at the person who had spoken from afar. He smiled and said, a senior instructed me to do so. Therefore I can only oblige. Following the standard procedures makes no difference for me. All right, we will not test your combat ability anymore. With your ability, no one among us of the same plane can defeat you, said the Run Huang from Wangshan Watchtower. With Yi Futian's flawless great path, his attacks were powerful. He had immediately swept the cultivators away. With such ability, they understood that among the cultivators from Wangshan Watchtower inside the Matrix, none of them was a match for Yi Futian. If that was the case, they didn't need to test him. At that moment, a few 7th-tier cultivators walked towards Yi Futian. Their auras were terrifying. They were also cultivators from the Dongshao continent. Yi Futian had eradicated members of their forces before this. Halt! Haven't all of you had enough? Said a cold and indifferent voice. Yang Qian, the young palace lord of Heavenly Battle Palace, glanced at these people as he spoke. Yi Futian began attacking everyone mainly to deal with the cultivators from Qinhe Palace and Alchemy Divine Palace, and the cultivators from the forces, who had previously wanted to attack him. Although Yang Qian had plotted against Yi Futian before this, he had not attacked Yi Futian. Upon hearing Yang Qian's chastising, the 7th-tier cultivators of Alchemy Divine Palace, Qinhe Palace, and the other forces froze. A cultivator from Wangshan Watchtower also added, "Everyone, this is not the real battlefield. All of you have already been disqualified from this test." This matrix was to select the cultivators who would enter Wangshan Watchtower. However, so many high-level cultivators had gone against one person, and were still unwilling to cease even now. Hence, there was no need for them to enter Wangshan Watchtower to cultivate anymore. Of course, upper-level Renhuangs came here to protect their younger generation. Once at their level, they had no chance of entering the Wangshan Watchtower themselves. Those who had the chance had come in the past. Hence, there was almost no one at the 8th tier and 9th tier here. Those belonged to the older generation of the various major forces. Their upper-level Renhuangs naturally understood this when they heard the cultivator say this. This conflict had indeed been foolish. In reality, they originally also stood a chance. Qi Mu, the successor candidate of Alchemy Divine Palace, and the others were actually very powerful. However, they had encountered Yi Futian and had been crushed by him. They did not even get the chance to display their strengths. They could only consider themselves unlucky. After hesitating for a moment, they all returned to their groups, retreating with their injured members. Continuing to remain here was meaningless. They might as well give up straight away. This conflict had served to highlight Yi Futian's splendor. After they retreated, the battlefield within the matrix suddenly fell silent. Yi Futian's explosive display of his abilities caused many fights to come to a halt as they watched his battle. Now the true confrontation resumed. It was between the cultivators of Wangshan Watchtower and the visitors from the northern land. Without these people provoking him, Yi Futian would certainly be accepted by Wangshan Watchtower. Regardless of whether he was a cultivator from the Dongshao continent or Wangdu, it was not important. There was no doubt about his position. He would enter to cultivate in the Watchtower, so he would naturally stand on their side. The reason why the Renhuangs from the northern land had come was for Wangshan Watchtower. As the two sides confronted each other, Yi Futian alone stood behind. His figure floated in the sky, facing the Renhuangs from the northern land. His expression remained calm. Below him were Zifeng, Lin Qiu, and the others. Over the vast battlefield, formless pressure of the Great Path emanated, causing it to be even more suppressive than before. The Renhuangs from the northern land spread themselves out. Each of them had an extremely frightening aura of the Great Path. Some of them even released their divine wheels of the Great Path directly. "How do all of you wish to fight?" the cultivator from Wangshan Watchtower said as he swept a glance at the Renhuangs from the northern land. "We have come to Wangshan Watchtower to seek guidance and teachings. We wish to meet with the Millet Emperor. Since we have entered this matrix, the rules should naturally be set forth by Wangshan Watchtower. Please feel free to do as you please," said Yin Dongyang from Great Yin ancient royal family, as he stood in midair. His expression was calm, and he spoke casually. It was as though they were not here to challenge Wangshan Watchtower, but instead were guests. "If that is the case, then we will go by the book," someone said. "We will find a person of similar cultivation plane, to test your combat ability. If all of you are sufficiently powerful, you may make your way through this matrix. If you pass through the doors ahead, you will enter directly into Wuxian Watchtower. They did not intentionally make things difficult for the other party, as though they treated them the same as any ordinary cultivator who came to take the test. When Yen Dongyang heard the member of the Wuxian Watchtower say this, he revealed a smile. As expected of the top holy land of the Dongxiao continent, you are generous. He then commanded his members, if that's the case, you'd better be prepared to face the ability of the Renhuangs of the strongest force of the Dongxiao continent. Such an opportunity does not come often. The cultivators of the great Yin ancient royal family were already prepared as they glanced over at the other party. Both sides were ready. Regardless of which side emerged victoriously, this would be a rare opportunity to test out their abilities. It was a good chance for them to witness how incredible the cultivators of Wuxian Watchtower were. Let us begin, the Renhuang from Wuxian Watchtower said. As he finished speaking, silhouettes stepped out, each seeking their own opponent. The next moment, the expressions of the Renhuangs from the northern land all turned solemn as they took this seriously. They were the elite cultivators from the northern land. Hence, they were able to suppress the Renhuangs of the Dongxiao continent. However, now they were facing the strongest group of Renhuangs of the Dongxiao continent, the cream of the crop. Who would dare to be careless against such opponents? The sounds of intense collisions of the Great Path soon followed. The law battles officially began. In an instant, various powerful law battles erupted in different corners of the matrix all at once. It was earth-shattering.